The studio shone like a freshly boiled egg. Artie had spent the whole of the previous day choosing an outfit, having a banana and lemon juice facial exfoliation, his eyebrows dyed a fierce black, an effleurage back and neck massage, and a magnificent hand job from Kim, an IT assistant in the Department of Televisual Innovation, newly created by Artie himself, and of which he was acting head, with yet another salary. He had spared no expense of taxpayers' money in preparing himself for this great moment. 3 chairs, the one in the middle on a subtle podium to give him that extra height, and a photographic backdrop, a huge blow-up of Artie himself, looking serious and concerned. The director had complained that it would detract from the discussion and might be viewed as a personal ego trip. The solution was simple. Artie sacked the director and decided to direct it himself. He was already producing it, as well as being the star, so it made sense, especially as he knew how the programme should look and sound, with a clarity apparently denied to others. It had worked brilliantly before, in his groundbreaking documentary on Michelangelo, in which the artist was mentioned twice, and Artie 350 times, mostly by Artie himself, and in his epoch-defining interview with dramatist Donald Pooter, in which Artie's questions, which he sometimes answered himself, took up 9/10 of the programme. He told the assistant director to keep the camera on him when he was speaking, and also when he wasn't, to get his reaction shots. The AD asked if there were to be no shots of the Archbishop and the Muslim priest. Artie relented and said fleeting shots were permissible, but no more than 5 seconds max. Then back to Artie. 10 minutes before the programme, the 3 luminaries are seated. Artie in the centre, having a last dust and powder from makeup. The Archbishop nervous, but pleased. This will smooth over the nightmarish newspaper reports. He had confronted Father Mac, who denied contacting the press. So he would have to go through the wearisome task of vetting all his bishops to discover the identity of the whistleblower. Samir smiles over at the Archbishop. His colours are flying. It is the lull. 3 men, each with a different script for the next hour. And now the moment arrives. It is countdown, and Artie looks at number 1 camera with an expression he has spent years cultivating. A hint of a smile, but the eyes oozing sincerity and soul, as if he has just saved a busload of children from death on a mountain road. In fact, this is the very image he likes to dwell on when in front of a camera, which is often. How he actually saved the children is a bit hazy, but it is the expression on his face that counts. The AD thinks it makes him look like a constipated toad. And now they are away. Artie reading the idiot cards, his short-sighted eyes slightly screwed up, but knowing this gives an air of gravitas to his demeanour. He gets up steam. The knee-jerk reactions of the popular press, this programme putting the record straight, a moment of historical magnitude. 2 of the greatest spiritual institutions on earth. Reconciliation, mutual respect, sharing of values. Both religions have the same ancient prophets, including Jesus Christ. The Archbishop wonders if Artie is ever going to shut up. Finally, he does. He turns to him. Archbishop, this report in the popular press. A foolish misunderstanding. I called a synod of bishops and we discussed ways of building bridges with the great Muslim faith in England. So, no talk of war, persecution? Oh, absolutely not. All nonsense. We are ambassadors for peace, which is the message of Jesus Christ. Samir joins in the laughter. Imam Samir, you accept that this supposed talk of war is just a bit of scaremongering to sell a few more copies of The Sun? I think it's an irrelevancy. What was Rupert Murdoch's office catchphrase? Keep 'em angry, keep 'em stupid. What interests me more is that it would be odd if the venerable Archbishop and his happy band of thugs were not busy planning violence against the Muslim population. Smile fades on the Archbishop's face as this sinks in. I'm sorry? Christianity is a litany of warmongering. Jesus says, I come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword. And I have come to cast fire upon the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. It seems to me, if the Archbishop were to read his own scriptures and take them seriously, he would be plotting a holocaust. A ripple of panic in the studio. You are taking those remarks out of context. Jesus Christ is the Prince of Peace. Do you suppose that I came to grant peace on earth? I tell you no, but rather division. In or out of context, these are inflammatory remarks. Literally so. Artie looks serious and troubled at camera. The mission of Christianity is one of forgiveness and love of humanity. Our God is a just God. I go back further. The Old Testament. Samuel, chapter 15. Go now and put Amalek to the sword, putting to the curse all they have, without mercy. Put to death every man and woman, every child and baby at the breast, every ox and sheep, camel and ass. Even the poor bloody animals get it in the neck in your religion of love and forgiveness. And the Lord is my shepherd. What does the shepherd do? Fattens the sheep and then sells them to be slaughtered and eaten. This is what your faith amounts to? Skinned, hacked to bits, cooked and eaten because you are stupid enough to trust the shepherd? The Archbishop, shocked to the root, fights back a desire to make tit-for-tat comments about Islam. You are distorting everything. Hosea, chapter 13. Samaria will be made waste. They will be cut down by the sword. Their little children will be broken on the rocks. Their women who are with child will be cut open. This is not a benign God. It is Freddy Krueger. No wonder you ate our babies during your cursed crusades. Two great faiths, two church leaders who find they can speak with one voice. Perhaps the lesson here, why in God's name do the crusades have to be dragged in? Here we are in the 21st century, still blaming each other for the foolish and violent mistakes of our ancestors. Your ancestors, all time is present to us. Two men who share one vision. I will not stoop to remind you that atrocities were committed on both sides. You just stooped. Your absurd faith is based on cannibalism, vampirism, and murder. Eat, this is my body. Drink, this is my blood. You crucified me, now consume me. You should dress like Count Dracula. I myself can see how the two belief systems cohere. My own understanding is that not cannibalism, communion. Remembering the Last Supper, not murder, sacrifice, redemption. Look at your culture. Soap operas, obesity, women who dress as prostitutes, alcohol and drugs. This is redemption? This is Gomorrah. If I can offer a few thoughts of my own in Arabic. He reads carefully. Samir suddenly stops and looks at Artie, who smiles at him. What did you say? Artie reluctantly puts on his specs to read again. Now I understand. This programme is simply an opportunity to insult the Muslim population. You and this Dracula priest have set it up between you. I don't understand. You can speak Arabic? Yes, a little. Then you know what you just said. Yes, understanding is the first step to heaven. What you just said was, you are a big-nosed camel with a fat arse. Oh, my God. Artie, who is now squinting at a new idiot card. Ah, this is what I really meant. He reads. Artie smiles at camera, then at Samir. We are all one in the light of God. Samir shakes his head. No. You have a face like a baboon's bum and the brain of a cucumber. Oh, my God. But I don't understand. I do. This was planned. You have insulted me and every Muslim in the world. Samir strides from the studio. A door slams. The Archbishop looks at Artie as if he would like to skin him alive and feed his entrails to cockroaches. Artie stares meaningfully at the camera, wondering why the hell the idiot cards have stopped appearing. He will sack so many people. The BBC will be a killing field before he's done. The cameras should have been cut long ago. The programme should have been blacked out at the first sign of trouble. Why did this not happen? Simple. Artie had made too many enemies. The AD had winked at the camera operator, who winked at the sound man. The producer told his PA to black out the programme. She told an engineer, who told his assistant, who happened to be the director sacked by Artie, and who ignored the instruction. And so it was that Artie Grimnob attained the universal notoriety he so craved. Gems, Artie's thwarted assistant, who wrote the Arabic idiot cards, was already on a bus home, thinking that there were better places than the BBC to work. It had been worth it. Artie's epitaph would surely read, in loving memory of the dumpy little dickwit who did his ignorant best to cause global mayhem. Jocelyn and Annie were met at a steamingly hot Ciampino by Father Giuseppe, a jocular little man who liked ice cream and his own jokes. He ushered them to a waiting Mercedes. The interior was deliciously air-conditioned. Father Giuseppe sat next to the driver and looked back at them. Bienvenute, my children. Such a pleasure. Ah, I have the many fond memories of England. Rain, curry, everyone on benefit except for the Polish immigrati who run the hospitals. He squeezed Annie's hand a little too long. She looked unperturbed. Jocelyn wanted to offer Dishwa a lift, but as soon as they were through passport control, two men wearing Ray-Bans, dark jackets, sandals and traditional white muslin cloths met him and spoke in whispers. Dishwa was still stupefied by the toilet incident, but the two men who whisked him away didn't look as if they would be taking him to a trauma counsellor. Jocelyn wondered if they were relatives or friends, perhaps associates. During the flight, he found refuge in speculative observation. Following the toilet disaster, he spent most of the flight scrutinising the profiles and backs of heads of other passengers, wondering what the purposes of their journeys were, what the contours of their hopes and fears and dreams. Initially, he did this to distract his thoughts from circling around Annie like a moth, and from the nearness of her body. But then he quite liked the activity for itself. He squinted so hard at times that Annie wondered if he was short-sighted, or slightly mentally deficient. He stared long and hard at the balding dome of a man 3 rows in front, and decided that he was a sales executive going to Rome in the hope of closing an important deal, something to do with fruit and jams. He thought the man was separated from his wife, and worried constantly that his children might stop loving him, or worse, come to prefer the new man in their mother's life. He felt sorry for him and wished he could offer some comfort. But approaching him and saying that he learned all this from contemplating his bald patch might be seen as bad manners. Jocelyn realised he didn't really know how to act in the world. Rockhold had been easier. There were rules. The days unfolded seamlessly in a ritual of prayer and indulging the lunacies of the monks. This was all infinitely more confusing. He wondered if it was sinful in some way to take such a speculative, voyeuristic interest in others like this. But then, as he discovered in the letters of Paul, you only had to open your eyes in the morning to commit all 7 carnal sins. He closed his eyes and asked for forgiveness for such a flippant thought. Being in the world was to be snared in barbed wire. "Penny for your thoughts, brother," said Sister Annie, smiling sweetly. "I was thinking about the deadly sins," said Jocelyn. "All 7? You must have a very fertile imagination," she said, guilelessly. Jocelyn blushed to his roots and felt giddy. He stared at the back of the driver's head and thought of goats and chickens and a dead body, the blood from a terrible wound staining the straw beneath him. What did it mean? Then he saw a man running away from the barn. The name Alberto dropped like a stone in Jocelyn's mind. They drove along the Via Tunica, around the high walls of the Vatican City, then the Via Paolo VI and into St. Peter's Square. The car parked and they got out into the heat. Jocelyn looked at the Basilica, the heart of Christianity. It was immense, a centre of the world and a portal to the everlasting. "It looks like a giant wedding cake," said Sister Annie cheerfully. Jocelyn found her puzzling, almost irreverent, yet her face sparkled radiance, and she had taken holy orders. How could anything but purity and faith dwell behind those beautiful eyes? Was it a sin to call them beautiful? Probably, especially if you were St. Paul, although surely there was a place for appreciating the lovely without falling headlong into a pit of carnality. He realised he was looking intently at her and turned away. 2 striped and shining Swiss guards approached, their silk pantaloons billowing like carnival sails. Father Giuseppe explained that the guards had served the Pape since the 16th century and pointed to the last stand battlefield, where in 1527 147 of the 189 guards, including their commander, died fighting the forces of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V during the sack of Rome, in order to allow Clement VII to escape through the Passetto de Borgo. Jocelyn noticed that the good father kept his eyes firmly on Sister Annie and seemed to be speaking only to her. The guard stood by patiently. The sad driver looked down and said nothing. Jocelyn suddenly knew. "He was your father. I'm so sorry," said Jocelyn. The driver looked at him quizzically. Father Giuseppe translated in Italian to the driver, whose mouth opened in astonishment as he looked at Jocelyn and crossed himself. "He asks how you knew he was thinking of his father," said Father Giuseppe, now looking at Jocelyn as if seeing him for the first time. Jocelyn blushed. "He found him in the barn. His head, it was terrible." "How you know this?" Jocelyn shook his head. What could he say? He saw it. The driver started talking wildly and gesticulating. "His name Giovanni. He want to know, if you know, who killed his father too." Jocelyn did. Someone called Alberto. But how could he tell poor Giovanni? What would be the consequences? He shook his head. If he said nothing, would it still count as a lie? The world was 1,000 small shocks. They were led into the basilica. Father Giuseppe, now looking at Jocelyn strangely. Sister Annie, smiling.